You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
You're listening to Making Tracks, Reaction Chat. Breaking down the latest in Star Wars programming. Here are your hosts, Mark Mulcaster and Mark Newbold.
Hello and welcome to Making Tracks, Reaction Chats brought to you by those fine folk, and some of them are ruffians, over at fanthatracks.com. My name's Mark, one of your co-hosts, Mark Mulcaster, I might add, and obviously joining me in a couple of minutes will be Mr. Mark Newbold. So, Chapter 7 and 8 of More Shadow Lord has just dropped, and we couldn't wait to hop on to record our initial thoughts and feelings on these two episodes, which in fact is the penultimate batch of the Shadow Lord episodes. So we've only got one more week to go. Can you believe it? So as always, spoiler warnings. Goes without saying for this episode and just about every episode of Reaction Chat. If you haven't seen the episodes, pause the episode, go and watch it, and then come back and hop back in, because we're going to trample over the plot points and probably all out of order, because that's the way we like to roll. The Empire has descended upon Janix, led by the first brother, Marok, who we learned last week had much more to him than, just as Mr. Newbold likes to put it, a fart in the wind. And for those who aren't too sure, please refer back to our Ahsoka reaction chats for greater context. This has led to the splitting up of our protagonists and the potential of two of them forming an uneasy alliance with old horny head himself, Mr. Maul. As Marek pursues both Devon Asara and Riley Larson through the underground repulsor train tunnels, they are saved by Maul, who confronts Marek, and with quick thinking by Devon, separates the train cars, leaving Marek to linger in the breeze far behind. Our two elder heroes, Master Daki and Randall Lawson, are on the younglings' trail, and they have to accept that this may not be a quick reunion. So, what is going to be on the cards for Chapter 7, Call to Oblivion, which is written by Nate Villanova and directed by Julia Kupperman, and Chapter 8, The Creeping Fear, written by Jennifer Corbett and directed by Saul Ruiz. So, Mark, Chapter 7 and 8, we're starting off to see alliances get tested further than maybe they would have done without the Empire's involvement. The Empire's really going to drop the hammer in these two chapters. What's your first thoughts on these two seriously good episodes?
Seriously good episodes, absolutely. Yeah, no, really excellent. Again, animation-wise, it goes without saying this show's nailing it right now, and there's plenty of real sort of top action in episodes 7 and 8. I love the fact that we have a Star Wars thing called the Creeping Fear, because that's been a name that's been sort of bandied around for decades. So that's very, very cool. But no, I love it. I like the little side glances between Devon and Maul, because he's obviously trying to entice her. And as the episodes go through, when you get to episode 8, and I know we're going to skip around the episodes, but you know, he's having his own battle within the things that he had to suffer as a youngling at the hands of Sidious. He's kind of, in episode 7 at least, intending to do that to Devon. He's clearly tempting her. Is the poison apple sort of thing. And so that's really interesting. She seems quite savvy, but also there's an edge to her as well. There's a couple of things that she says throughout the episode, and a couple of things that she does, like boosting the speeder in episode 8. So there's things that she'll happily do that are a little bit, you know, on the edgy side. We've had the train sequence at the end of episode 6, and so here we are in Call to Oblivion, where that sort of happened, and now it's, do we follow the tiger into the jungle, or do we go on our own? It's really good. And Riley, actually, you see the relationship between Devon and Riley start to develop in a more, she's not quite so sharp with him. He's a bit more understanding of what she's about. So I like the balance in that.
They do start off, Riley reluctantly goes along with her. And it's interesting kind of seeing Devon's views of Riley, because she does say to him anyway, like, you know, let the boy go, so to speak.
Yeah.
And go. And he's like, boy, typical teenager, thinks he knows everything and he is a man. But in this situation, Devon is so much more worldly. She's probably fought in the Clone Wars. You know, she's led troops, and you can clearly see she's very combat trained, the way that she takes down those stormtroopers and those other gunships. Maul's he's really pushing her, and he's kind of saying, look, fine, go off by yourself, but you know, you're not strong enough to kind of take on like Marek and the Empire.
Yeah.
However, if you stay with me, I will make you as strong as you need to be to defeat your enemies, which is a very Sith thing to do. It's like, I will give you the skills and the power just to basically put everybody to task, as it were, to defeat them all. And actually, one of the things I really like about this episode, actually, is one of the first times we see Marek. It's like proper serious Batman animation.
Yeah.
It is totally. It's a Dark Knight, and I think, obviously, not only just visually, but I think the music kind of score, what's happening there, it felt very Batman-y as well.
Which is kind of cool because an Inquisitor would have that kind of overview of a city.
The whole series has got that kind of vibe, really, hasn't it? We are almost just waiting for like a Commissioner Gordon type character. Well, I suppose in some respects, Brandon Lawson kind of is that kind of character to make sense, but it's that whole thing, isn't it? Of like,
yeah,
it's playing the police when you need them, but also against the establishment and against everybody else when you kind of don't need them to kind of keep them out of like harm's way. But yeah, I mean, we're starting to see that the Imperials are really kind of, they're starting to instill a curfew. So therefore, they're really kind of closing down the planet and the city, which will lead, hopefully, to spur like Brandon and the Jedi out of cover. But it gives them maximum control. And again, it's like we said, we don't think the Empire is going to give up that control once they've really locked everything down. This will be how it is for a foreseeable.
I'm Brian Herring, BB-8 Puppeteer, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. That'll learn you.
Yeah, I mean, the episode opens with the ISD over the city, but it's nighttime this time, which is another, just gives a nice different visual when we've had 2 or 3 episodes now open with the Star Destroyer above the city. So that's kind of cool, showing that it's not going anywhere. And you kind of imagine these episodes are happening, we're a couple of days.
I kind of think that so far, all 8 episodes, you could literally, if you didn't have probably the different directors and talent credits and stuff, you could cut out those credits and you could just make one continuously long film.
As it plays.
It doesn't feel like there's any massive like jumps in time. It's maybe half hour or an hour, but even that, they're very quick at cutting from one scene to another, or from Maul to Lawson and that. And so therefore you kind of don't necessarily get that passage of time. It feels for times condensed, which therefore makes everything quite claustrophobic as well.
I like the relationship between Maul and Devon, as such as it is, because she still clearly and smartly doesn't trust him. Keeping him at arm's length as much as she can. Riley wants to get away. Spybot's keeping an eye on everything, and he's definitely going to be a fan favourite. When Spybots always start coming out, that's going to be so much fun. But you've got the sequence where Devon and Maul do start to clash on the bridge. When that all starts to kick off, the Imperials start to see it. It's such a great visual, just that long strip of bridge and just the lightsaber blades going in. So they're drawing attention to themselves without realising quite that they're doing it. They can't fight in the tunnels forever. They've got to fight in the open sometime.
By Devon and Maul focusing on one another, I mean, Maul's taken his eye off of everything else. So you now have like Rookcast, who's not particularly happy to see the kids are back, because that's extra baggage. And they're trying to pack up this base because they know they got to hightail it off of the planet. And for Mercs, they're starting to get antsy because they're not doing anything, which means they're not getting paid. And this is obviously a theme that kind of comes back in later on in the episode. And I think even in chapter 8, if you've got mercenaries not sat around, not doing anything, then their loyalty goes as quickly as the credits do.
Obviously, Maul is at the early stages of rebuilding. He had the Shadow Collective, and that's kind of gone by the wayside because of everything that happened. And now he's sort of starting to re-establish himself in the underworld, but it's really early doors. And obviously, Rookcast is on side. There's scenes in the episodes, I think it's episode 8, where she's quite firm she's a no-nonsense character, but she's quite firm at saying, as you just said, these Mandalorians will be loyal, but some Mandalorians need paying, and he's like, it's a temporary problem. Look at the long picture, which to me seemed really stood up to me as almost naive to me for him to say that. It's like, really, you've got to know that these guys are there for the money. They're mercenaries and they're Mandalorians. And like the scene when they're bugging out and she's like, put the credits down. We haven't got time. And they're sort of between themselves. We're not even on this job at the moment. We've made nothing. We're advancing his cause, but he's not advancing our cause. So I like the dissension. I like the way that boils, and obviously that big time comes to a head later in the episodes.
You'd think that Maul would be a little bit more savvy about stuff like that. He hasn't really kind of read that many people into his grand scheme. You kind of like almost have to take him at face value that he's got a plan and that, this guy seems like he knows what he's doing, so just stick with him. Mercs don't get, they don't survive like that. They only trust themselves, and as long as the contract's working. So the moment that there's no money, then that's it. You'll be like, well, I'm not sticking around. I'm moving
And
on.
he was trained as a Sith by Sidious. Sidious always had a plan. You imagine, or I imagine, that Sidious never really shared much of his plan with Maul, of all people. Certainly did with Dooku, because it was a different time and a different sort of plan. And with Anakin,
a different dynamic as well.
Totally. Yeah. I think of all the apprentices of Sidious that we saw in Phantom Clones and Sith, and the Clone Wars, obviously, the one that would have had the most knowledge of the plan, like all the air quotes, I think would be Dooku, because it was quite adversarial between Vader and Palpatine for a lot of their 20-odd year relationship again. And Maul was always the young underling. So I think Maul is used to there being a plan, and in his previous station not being privy to it. Now he's top of the food chain, and he's probably thinking, I don't need to tell these people what's going on. They just need to follow.
With the kind of dynamic that he would have with Sidious, Sidious would probably tell him it would be very abstract. It would be like, one day they'll worship you, and very hyperbolic. I mean, I guess ultimately, when you've got Dooku who's having to negotiate with the other separatists and go to Geonosis and talk to Poggle Lesser about Death Star and stuff, he kind of needs to have a little bit more information as to what's going on, because you can't just send him there completely blind. Surely he must have some idea, or whether or not it's the truth or not is another matter entirely, And
Dooku, being a former Jedi Master, he's a negotiator, much like Obi-Wan. So you can see that he would know, he could read the room and know when to sort of wield the sword or when to offer the hand. You know what I mean? So he knows the ebbs and flows of these kind of things better than you imagine Vader would. Vader just walks in the room, 6'8", black armor, don't question it, just do it. Imposing. And Maul was a different type of weapon. Most of his work was done before the Phantom Menace, which is before him and Qui-Gon have the clash on Tatooine, when the Sith aren't even supposed to be around. So his sort of subterfuge and work for Sidious was done on the quiet.
Speaking of imposing characters and Sith Lords, we see Marek waiting for the arrival of the 11th brother, which I think we just refer to him as the Crow, from when he first appeared in episode 6 of Tales of Jedi, when he was sent to hunt down Ahsoka. So now there's two of them. And first we basically just saw Batman, and now we've got the Crow.
And like you say, Marok is the first brother. He's the 11th brother. It seems to me, the vibe to me was that the Crow, as you say, was the senior one. He did seem to be leading from the front. He was the one that was, he was the one that was in charge. So again, I know we've had this conversation, but it's not very clear on, just because you're the first brother doesn't necessarily mean you're the top brother.
I had to have a look the other day at a list of all the Inquisitors. It's just one of those things. Yeah. Clearly, I think what happens in the writers' room, we go, right, what number have we got spare?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, seventh sister, that's quite a nice alliteration, so we'll give that one away quite easily because that's early on. But now it's like, now you're into the really kind of awkward kind of like numbers and stuff like that.
It's a bit like Reservoir Dogs, isn't it? Why do I have to be Mr. Brown? That just sounds like Mr. It's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't want to be Mr. Pink, but I had a look on the credits and had to remind myself. But he doesn't speak, so there is no other name for him other than it's either 11th brother or the Crow, and I'm just going to live with the Crow because
I like the Crow.
That's what my notes say anyway, because it's quicker to type that than the 11th brother.
It definitely is.
For everything in one location. Daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Riley's been captured. Riley gets captured on the bridge. He gets taken to HQ. I love the sequences, and it plays through both episodes, of Two Boots, who doesn't feel like he owns the name Two Boots anymore, which I think is quite cute, actually, just because he hasn't got his boots on. That he comes to the realisation, there's a sequence later when he's got the coffee. It's almost like he's programmed to get a coffee for Branda. He's got the drink, and he bumps into that other guy who says, Price hasn't been taken away. She's dead. Yeah, they're not following the protocol, and the penny drops.
I was thinking it's quite an interesting scenario. He's so rigid, and you do wonder, in especially chapter 7, is he able to get past that? Because you kind of have those moments with Blake where it's like, damned with the protocol. I just want him interrogated now. Yeah. You screw whatever your law book says. This is the Empire, matey. Yeah, we do what we want when we want. Obviously, by design, like, he's got such a blank face, and I'm still not keen on the voice.
It's tricky. I think for us, especially as Brits, we're so used to Richard O'Reilly, and it's such a distinct. It's like if Matt Berry did turn up as a voice, and it
Yeah.
stood out a mile. You hear that, you hear Toaster London, you hear all the city IT crowd, another IT crowd guy.
Yeah.
So it's tricky in that one. The more I watch it, the more I am going with it. I like his voice.
Yeah, I like his voice. I think what it is, it's just a little bit too clean, and it could probably do with a little bit more artificial droidiness about it.
Isn't it a bit like Daisy? That was a little bit too North London.
She's Watford. Yeah.
Totally, I was going to say Watford, but yeah. It's interesting. I like seeing that. And you're right, he has got a blank face. But there's weirdly, on our group review last week, and forgive me, I think it was Dan Lowe that mentioned it. Why do droids' eyes blink? But his eyes do blink, and there is some sort of emotion. He's emoting in a way. It's the one way you can really get it across.
Yeah.
And a director can get it across by holding the camera on him, and he can kind of
blink.
Yeah, you can kind of see the gears turning.
Could almost see like is a programming starting to be rewritten. How well do droids know the difference between the letter of a law and following the intent of a law?
That's true.
In this case, so it's like the moralness of it versus like just pure protocol.
There's a great sequence near the end of episode 7 where both sides clash. As you say, you've got the Crow, the 11th brother, and Marok, the first brother, on the one side with the Imperials and the dropships, and then you've got Rookcast and the rest of the Mandalorians and Maul and those guys on the other side. Monster clash on the bridge, and it's a really impressive battle. The bridge looks great, doesn't it? It's a big battle. Yeah. The bridge looks great with all the sort of the growth on it and the undergrowth on it, and you do see Icarus, one of the other Zabraks, get taken out. Now, just quickly, I learnt that Icarus is called Icarus because Matt Michnovets is a massive Maiden fan. We were messaging on Messenger. Yeah, I saw a picture of him in a Maiden t-shirt, and I said, "Are you a Maiden fan?" "Yes, I'm a Maiden fan since the 80s, same as me." So we got talking about that, and he said, "Why do you think Icarus got his name? It's named after Flight of Icarus from Peace of Mind."
Yeah.
So I love that. Obviously, love that. So yeah, so he's down, he's out. So obviously, it's all these little things that, as much as we're sympathising with Brander and Riley, obviously they're kind of caught up in this adventure. And to a lesser degree, Daki and Devon, because they're Jedi who are trying to evade something tangible, being Order 66 and staying out of the way and on the down low as we met them at the beginning. Maul is losing things as well. Now, he's lost another fellow Zabrak. And as we see when we get into episode 8, Creeping Fear, great title, that, you know, when he has his visions, you realise how wounded he was by not only by the death of Savage Opress, his brother, but even when he was taken away by Sidious, you even see a sort of a dream sequence of that.
There's a lot of separation. And I think part of that is spurred on by the fact that you see, so it is Icarus, isn't it? Who gets speared by one of the lightsabers. And then the other one on the bridge screams out, "Brother." Surely that's one of those PTSD moments. Because Maul's seeing it, and you can see in his face that there's like that connection to like when Savage dies. And so that obviously is spurring on what we start to see in the manifestation in chapter 8. What's really cool is like it's a bottleneck, isn't it? If there's nowhere to go, you've got the Empire kind of coming in. There's something really cool about seeing those stormtroopers kind of hop off those Latvi, because it kind of feels like perfect fan fiction kind of thing, like, you know, getting the best of, like, you know, the prequel kind of iconography. Some stormtroopers in there and that, but you forget.
And Macquarie stormtroopers again, which look amazing.
But you go, oh yeah, that's because only a year ago they would have been clone troopers. So that whole battle was just like intense, really intense. And what I really like about it is that the commandos and Rookcast, they hold their own, and you've got Vario just going, "Do you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to see if I can steal that ship," and just kind of like hightail it out of it. Of course, he doesn't. The other commandos get on there. They're like, "Do you know what? We're out of here. Screw this. We literally left our credits, so we're just going to fly off." And then they get taken down in some kind of like ironic destruction moment.
And it's great because it's what you said. The bottleneck on the bridge is one thing with both sides piling in. There's so many bodies just coming in and getting wasted.
Yeah.
But also flying out, you know, it's such a narrow canyon. When the dropships come in, there's 3 of them. You know, when the Mandos get up and have time to look out, they think they're away and free. There's nothing to worry about. But turn around and literally the missiles are already coming out of the dropships. They've got no time to react. So great scene.
Tactically, not a wise move to kind of leave the ship there, and because, you know, single bridge, single choke point. Ideally, you want to get across the bridge and blow it before the other side can get across. But then obviously Maul's now having another duel of fates, this time with the first brother and the 11th brother and the Crow and Marok, and it's
fart in the wind.
Yeah, fart in the wind. And actually, what's quite ironic, they start that fight, and there's 2 of them. The Inquisitors, they've both got double lightsabers. He's got a single lightsaber, and he's, you know, having to defend himself. But then obviously we kind of get to a point where it's just like double lightsaber duel. It's a really interesting kind of environment because, like you said, there's vines on that bridge mat, so it's kind of like the abandoned part of the city.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got that dystopian kind of vibe, whereas like the rest of the city's not necessarily utopian, but it's more modernized and it's
Yeah.
inhabited. Whereas this feels like, it could almost be another planet and another environment.
It felt a bit like, remember in I Am Legend when he goes back into the city,
Yeah.
it's all overgrown.
Totally.
It had that vibe about it.
Yeah. A bit like with Coruscant, where they just build on top of the levels. Feels like they've just actually gone, do you know what? We're just going to move to another part of the city and just let this be. But yeah, so you have a fantastic 2-on-1 lightsaber duel, and Maul's dancing around in the shadows because he does a massive leap down from a bridge, and that really kind of knackers his knee. So then suddenly he hasn't got a sturdy base, therefore making him very vulnerable to attack. So suddenly it's like, right, he's got to kind of start playing around in the shadows and try and separate these two brothers. They're just too good.
They are. They're well drilled, clearly, and they sense that he's wounded. They sense that he's injured. He does a great scene where it looks like, it's the end of episode 7, it looks like he's surrendering. That's their tactical mistake, when they should just deal with him, but they don't. They say, the Emperor wants you dead. And that's enough for him to go, screw it. And he pulls the roof down on them, which again was a great scene, which leads into the 8th episode. Now, when you see at the beginning of the 8th episode after the recap, and he leaps out of that cavern, and he does the corkscrew spin, just like Palpatine did.
Yes, well, I'm calling the sheave spin.
I like it, the sheave spin.
There you go.
I like it.
Which again, it's cool because this whole episode, this whole chapter, really, this is the explanation that the uninitiated audience needs to know. Because up to this point, we've had vague answers as to why, what his motivations are for this. But this is like the perfect time to really explain it all to everybody. You've got the time to do it and just kind of show how traumatic his life is. And actually, what it does is it changes our perspective as to who Maul is. Now, you end up, by the end of this chapter, you start questioning, Maul's quite a sympathetic character.
Yeah.
Should we be rooting for him now rather than Jedi?
It's the scale of it, though, isn't it? On the smallest, on the Janix scale, I feel your sympathy should probably lie more with Brander and Riley because they've been pulled into this, and to a large degree, but not so much, the Jedi who have been caught up in this whole situation. And the spanner in the works is Two Boots calling the Empire in, which really escalates the whole situation. But when you look at the grander scheme of things, we've followed Maul since 1999. We're 27 years in with this character. And so we know through books and comics, and I know some of the stuff we know in our heads is now legends rather than canon, but it's still all in there. So we know he went through a torturous time of training, gets to the point now where he's come back. He shouldn't be alive, but he is. So now he's trying to make something of his life. And as episode 8 goes forward, The Creeping Fear, there's this great sequence. I know we're skipping around a bit. There's a great sequence where he's injured and he's on his knees and he sees a reflection of himself and he basically says, I hate you. He can't look at himself. Later in the episode, when he's gone through more of these sort of reflections and visions, however you want to frame it, he sees himself as a young boy and says, I forgive you. In not so many words, but he's basically saying, I forgive you. It wasn't your fault. And I'm going to make sure that what happened to you doesn't happen to anybody else. So in the grand scheme of things, I think he's determined to get out there and make the Emperor pay for all the wrongs he did to him and to make sure he doesn't do it to anybody else. Now, of course, we've seen Rebels, we know the original trilogy. We even can go right forward down the timeline to the Rise of Skywalker if we really want to. He doesn't succeed. We know he doesn't succeed, but his motivation is there.
Hi, it's Tom Wilton, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
One of the thoughts I had, George Lucas's plans for the sequel focus heavily on Maul the Crime Lord. And I still believe that actually, I think Lucas would have brought Palpatine back because Ming the Merciless never dies.
Yes.
But how freaking amazing and would that payoff be if actually the person who takes down Sidious at the end is Maul, having gone through this massive arc? And, you start to learn about the fact that, he was basically beaten and whipped with electric lightning bolts. He's pulled from his family. He sees his brother killed by his master. He's betrayed by his master. Then he's destroyed by a Jedi. And then he kind of hangs around Lothal Minor for, 10 years?
Spider-Maul,
But then to come back and then to kind of actually take Sidious down, if you had a grand plan, if you had like a 20,000 foot view of what 50 years of the franchise is, would actually be very interesting.
And the fact that it would have been a villain, essentially, but taking down another villain would have been a twist. I don't know what George's plan would have been beyond that. And, of course, we'll never know because he sold the company. So, it'll be always one of those what-ifs. But it would have been fascinating to have seen, if he had have played that out, what Maul's decision would be once he'd done that. Was it a personal vengeance? he didn't ever want to rule the galaxy. He got into the underworld. He never challenged Sidious. So his scope of ambition wasn't what Sidious's was. So it would have been really interesting, like you say, to see how it would have played out.
It's purely revenge. And that, I think, we're just going to build on that for the next 2 episodes as well. Now that everybody's back and reunited, so he's back with Rook Cast and whatever dwindling commandos are left. So they head off to Nicodemus's office, and Vario gets a call from Crimson Dawn for saying that Dryden Voss requests a chat with him. Things are starting to look up for Maul and makes him one step closer to where we then find him in Solo.
Yeah.
Everybody's been reunited. So Tubus has come back. He's redeemed himself. He's rescued Randall Lawson's son. And now the Jedi are there. Had a fantastic techno chase through Janix.
The music was great. The action was great. Yeah. When Daki's at the back and he sort of uses the Force to pull them on speeder towards and scoops it towards the dropship, and the dropship's in front of them. When you see the one speeder when they drop, I mean, Devon made a great choice with that speeder. But, it was as good a choice as Anakin made in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, she was sassy as Anakin, and she gave some lip back, and it's that nice trope, isn't it, with the Jedi Padawan thing. They kind of slightly know better on that.
Exactly. And I like when you had the sequence when she got the ship, you didn't see her take those 3 guys out. She just goes, okay, and here we go. But when she does that big drop off the one bridge, and then the speeder comes down behind her, and 2 of them make it, the one just hits the guardrail and flies off. And all the sounds from Jedi, loads of speeder bite sounds from Jedi. It was just great sequence.
I mean, that's the thing they've done really well with the series is the action is pretty intense and fastly cut, especially the chases. So you really kind of get that sense of speed, as you're zipping around the city. We could talk about this for another 35 minutes, 40 minutes. We're going to have to call it.
We are.
And we will probably rejoin this conversation. We might even carry on with some of this conversation in the next episode of Making Tracks. So why don't you join us in a couple of days for that? And until then, Mr. Newbold can tell you how you can get in touch.
Yes, I can. I encourage you to all do that. Love to hear your thoughts on Maul Shadow Lord. But if you are going to get in touch, this is how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show Good Morning Tatooine goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Brilliant. Right, everybody else, have a fantastic day. Stay safe. Remember, watch Maul Shadow Lord. And until next week, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.